Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Outdoors, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the outdoor hospitality industry. From campgrounds and RV parks to glamping, outdoor resorts, adventure travel, and ecotourism, we'll be discussing all things outdoor travel and hospitality, so join us on Good Morning Outdoors every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Hey, Alex, good morning.
Well, Matt, we survived Memorial Day weekend, which is a feat of its own, especially in the camping and outdoor hospitality space. You can safely say, I think we made it. All of the park operators and managers that we both know, I've gotten some great feedback personally from people saying this was a really great Memorial Day for them. People excited, out camping, the enthusiasm for camping in our industry is very much still there. And this was a very good Memorial Day. How do you see it? I know we've got some stuff to share and some things that you did over the Memorial Day weekend as well.
Yeah.
That's on the fun side.
Yes. So, got some feedback first and foremost from some campers that they thought it was probably the busiest, most, active weekend they've seen at Covered Bridge since we bought it.
Wow.
4 years ago, which is encouraging to hear. Love to hear that. Definitely put some strain on the electrical system. Had to tell some people to turn off the double air conditioners and whatnot.
5 refrigerators and all the rest.
Yeah. So, it was good weather, good occupancy, fun family times at Covered Bridge campsite. I wasn't there. I was in Massachusetts seeing my family that I haven't seen in a while, and getting my rooftop truck tent installed.
Yeah, we talked about this here last week and got a fun picture to share of your little one, Charlie, in this thing. Incredibly cool. I don't think truck campers get a ton of love in our space, but man, I mean, just look at that thing. Like, it's amazingly cool. You can transport it, all in one unit with the truck and the camper. Don't have to worry about towing anything. And he looks like he's having a blast. Yep.
And my wife has been sick with the sinus infection and ear infection, so I've been spending a little more time on days as she's recovering, and every day is, Dad, let's go in the tent. We just open it up in the driveway and play up in the tent. So have not taken it camping yet. That's the plan this weekend, to take it down to Covered Bridge, have the inaugural trip. Been looking at all the gear and accessories and all that. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a blast. And, it's a great way to spend some time with a 2.5-year-old. That's for sure.
Right. I was going to say, you're pretty much bringing the campground to him with this thing, and he can go up and have his own little personal escape in it. So I love it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I've been powering myself with some coffee as well this morning. And I feel for Carrie for sure, and hope that all this little under the weather bug is kind of hitting us right as we kick off summer here. But we've got some great stories and articles to share today. So why don't we dive on into the news with really a topic we've talked for the last couple of weeks here. Honestly, we might have covered sort of public lands and outdoor recreation now for multiple weeks straight. A topic that just constantly, we feel like there's more news being released about it, new changes coming, and incredibly important to keep everybody informed and updated on what's going on. So the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable put out a release that we saw in Woodall's Campground magazine, talking about the public lands sell-off that has been kind of floated within the House bills that have come to the floor. And this actually a portion of it talking about the sale of public lands that was added, I think, by the Natural Resources Committee, actually got removed from this bill. And it was something I think that there was enough pushback from enough people that said, I don't know that this is the best idea. Even if we have a debt problem, even if we want to try and cut waste, that people resoundingly spoke and said, this is not the way to do it. There are better options and avenues. Matt, what did sort of this release? There was a number of people who kind of spoke and have lobbied for this. What do you think this says about really the importance of public lands and where this sits in conversation today?
It's really interesting. Focused around 540,000 acres in Utah and Nevada, which some of the most beautiful places we have. I'd question, I don't think it was in and of itself the idea of a public land sell-off that turned a lot of the people off. It's the lack of a plan around it. It's the lack of, well, what's next? Right. It's just like sell the land, get some money, and that's the plan, which is really no plan. So I was encouraged to see, not that I'm a proponent of public land sell-off by any means, but there was thoughtful, commentary on this about, well, hey, we're not per se just against public land sell-off. We're against kind of a disorganized and, approach to it that seems to lack a plan. So,
are there better ways to monetize the public lands? Are there ways that, things we can do to, as you said, keep them, put some other thing in place, and ways to generate additional revenue, right? So let's come up with that first before we figure out what's really next on the table.
Right. So, we've said before that it's obviously a huge part of our business. It drives all kinds of hospitality, not just outdoor hospitality, guide services, vendors. A lot of these economies in these small towns are based off of attendance to these lands. So it's more a story about what uncertainty does to a market versus just the fact that it's a prospective public land sell-off. It's really the uncertainty, I think, that gets people scared, gets people apprehensive, and probably scares off some investors. So that's my takeaway is, maybe it is the right move, but you need a long-term plan. You need a lot more detail around what's going to happen with that land. It's a lot. Utah and Nevada, that's land that's pretty well suited for outdoor recreation. So is it like what it's so funny to me that it's all about, public sell the land, but like to who and for what, and like what's going to happen with it. So until we see some formulation of that, I don't think it's going to go through, right? Because that's just, I don't know. It's just
exactly. I mean, a lot of these lands are not buildable in the first place. Like it would be very, very difficult to, spring a condo development or even to mine it for natural resources or things of that nature. David Wilms had a quote in this article from National Wildlife Foundation talking about the existing law that governed the land that really allows for the sale and transfer of public lands when necessary, and that has been in place for the last 50 odd years or so. So it's not as though, as you described, Matt, there's no circumstance in which public land can not be transferred or can be sold for any reason. There's existing laws that already allow for that. That if we're just, looking at this and saying, well, here's a chunk of land, we're going to artificially provide for its sale. I don't know that that's in the best interest of the public, of the states, and really of the national rec economy. So good to see them slowing down, making more thoughtful, pragmatic decisions. And I think this is a good thing, being that laws are already on the books. There are ways to monetize the lands. Let's figure out how to do that first and then possibly revisit this in the future. So good update on some material we've already talked about. And speaking of selling some land, our next story really ties into this as well. And this one, honestly, is a little bit more sad. I was honestly a little bit heartbroken to hear of this story and for this family. KOA Holiday Campground down in Florida. I think this is Panama Beach area is closing after the Florida Department of Transportation is looking to purchase this property under eminent domain. Which, man, anytime you hear that word, eminent domain, it's kind of, game over. for private businesses and in campgrounds, and there's really nothing that this family can do. I believe they're allowed to operate for a little while longer, kind of partway into their season. I think kind of middle of June, July is when they're projected to kind of cease operations. But this is a brand new park, Matt. This is something that just opened fairly recently, and now they're being told, hey, this campground will no longer exist. We're going to take this and really use this land for transportation purposes, and they're kind of struggling with what to do next. I mean, what do you make of this whole situation? Again, such a just sad situation in general for KOA, this family. Obviously, this is an individually owned KOA, so this is an individual family that owns this franchise location, not corporate. And then all of these campers, long-term campers and short-term folks who have reservations on the books to stay at this park. Just a really sad situation in general.
Yeah, it takes me back to my real estate license courses and days doing that, because you learn all about eminent domain and you read these case studies, and it's a cautionary tale. And it's not about the money, right? Like, they got paid fair market value. I tried to dig and find what the purchase price was, and I couldn't find it, but it's assessed for like $3.6 million. I would assume it's somewhere around there. Right? Like, financially, I would assume they're probably fine, but this is a perfect example of how this business really isn't about the money, right? They put years of their life and made plans around running this park and building the park, and they put, blood, sweat, and tears into it, just to find out that 18 months later, the Florida Department of Transportation is taking it over, and they had to cancel reservations. They had reservations out a full year that they had to call and cancel reservations. I mean, that has a ripple effect on that area, displacing renters and, all that. But yeah, it's just a sad story. It's something that you probably don't think about in a due diligence period, where, you're looking at, we're right next to the highway. That's great for demand. That's great for access. You never think about, well, what if they expand the highway?
Right.
So maybe, I don't know, you can add that to the list for due diligence and call up, the state and try to do that. But
there's really nothing here that's going to protect you in the end. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the protection is that they pay market value. So like, I would assume that it was a profitable sale, but again, that's not really what it's about. They wanted to run and operate this property and provide hospitality to guests, and they don't get to do that. So sad.
Right. And I feel like this is, especially when we talk about expansion of transportation, we're talking about, more people traveling and accessing the roads to go visit and do things in that particular area. This is kind of a, from the state's perspective, a negative consequence of that. It's like, look, if you're expanding the highway so much that it's cutting out all of the businesses and things that people are taking the highway for to visit, like, you almost find yourself in a little bit of a catch-22 of, it's just it's difficult. I'm sure, again, the Florida DOT was also quoted in this article saying how obviously they don't want to have to affect small businesses and drive people out of the local economy. But there are cases like this where, wanting to complete this project put them in the pickle where they have to choose some businesses like this KOA campground to displace. And obviously, again, Florida's known for being a pretty pro-business friendly state. I doubt this is something that they, did purposely, but it's just one of those, again, that RV transportation and travel on the highways is a real thing. And as you said, Matt, you're really displacing a lot of folks from this particular area. And hopefully more campground developments will come in this area. Maybe they'll look for another plot of land locally if they like this area, like the clientele, and can take that money that they just got paid and reinvest and start again. Maybe it's a new KOA we see here in a couple of years that we're announcing that's their own property that's, built a few miles away from this existing location. So really sad situation. Hopefully they continue in the hospitality business, or we see more campground development and activity in this area to support all of this displacement. But really sad situation. As you said, you don't often think about it. You don't often plan about it. But here we are talking about it in a campground that otherwise was a great business and running really well.
Yeah, well said.
In another announcement, we have another familiar name kind of rejoins the show. I think we've maybe talked about Hip Camp before. If people aren't familiar with them, we'll give a little bit of background for who they are and what they do. They're obviously one of, if not probably the best, campsite and now RV site, third-party OTA provider in our industry. Hip Camp has been known for a long, long time as kind of the, tent camping hub. And if you were somebody who wanted to stay both at public lands, as well as some private campgrounds or individually owned facilities, and you were looking for tent camping, Hip Camp was your spot to go. You could often find great inventory and availability last minute. And that was really just what they had built up a great name and reputation for. More recently, they've had some great acquisitions like Book Outdoors that was acquired within the last year or so. As well as with this announcement, really expanding campground bookings and partnerships with some of the biggest, names in the space. We see, a lot of the corporate entities, names that most folks would know who are multi-park ownership groups in the campground space are listing our inventory on Hip Camp. And I think it's a really great thing, both to kind of add camping and RVing together, and the more kind of centralized, built up places of our inventory, outdoor hospitality inventory in more places, reaching more consumers. I think ultimately that's a win to see that alongside of hotels, alongside of tent camping. The more we can just be associated with hospitality in general, I think it just is better for our industry in general. Matt, what did this announcement from Hip Camp tell you, and what does this really mean for our industry, especially as we've still got some time the rest of this season to for folks to kind of list and capitalize on this and really try out a third-party provider if they haven't already?
Yeah, I see it as maybe somewhat of a pivot. I thought it was interesting in that, as you sort of alluded to, that Hip Camp was kind of known for like the not the anti-campground, but like the non, it's catered to people that were overlanding with
Right.
rooftop truck tents and looking for more secluded, really out there type of campsites, different experience.
Right. Not exactly the campground community experience that a lot of people come to expect. That's really traditional in the RV space. Most RVers want that. They want to have a community of folks, but people, as you said, Matt, that are going out to public lands or they're tent camping, want to be left alone in nature to kind of be out in the country.
Right. Which is more my speed. I think that's why I picked the first campground I did, because it is more of that rustic, old school, really experiencing nature in kind of a wilderness setting. So I love the story of Hip Camp. I've studied them and written a little bit about them, and just a really awesome story that started with Alyssa, the founder there, looking for a campsite and having a terrible experience. No real unified system out there to find campsites. And I think it makes sense from a business perspective. It doesn't seem to really like take away from kind of the identity, which is good. It's moving towards more of kind of a one-stop shop model, which I think makes a ton of sense. Probably helps their revenue. I would imagine. I don't know how that all specifically works. I'm going to go through and see, because obviously I want to be listed there as a campground, because I think our campgrounds do resonate with
that audience,
the Hip Camp audience. So I like it. I'm happy for them. I think they do a lot of great things for the industry. They put out good reports and data, and they're really champions for our industry and the return to nature, which is what I'm all about. So I'm I'm definitely following along and excited.
And I think we see it with more third-party providers, especially as we've seen in even the hotel space. I know all of our other folks and crews on other days of Good Morning Hospitality have talked a lot about Airbnb's launch of experiences, kind of adding what would be a complementary piece to their existing kind of model. I kind of see HipCamp doing similar, where, as you said, Matt, known for tent camping, let's add a very complementary experience in a more pronounced way with RVing and more of these corporate RV partners, people that I think HipCamp can rely on too, that says, hey, there's a very consistent experience with these corporate operations, a way that we can get a lot of inventory all at one time. And I think that a lot of these third-party providers are looking to kind of continue to find what's that next complementary piece. How can we provide consumers with more of what they want? Airbnb doing it with experiences, and in our industry, HipCamp doing it with more professional campgrounds and RVing. So I think that's really good to see. And as you said, excited to kind of see what's coming next for them. And speaking of RVing, we've got some, I think, really good commentary from the RV Dealer Association president, Phil Ingrassia, on COVID era RVers. We have talked a lot about this, and there have been a lot of questions, I think rightly so, from a lot of folks on, what's happened and what can we really tell in Garner coming out of COVID about people who were buying RVs, people who were, staying in campgrounds and on public lands for the first time. What has happened to them, and what are they really? Did we do a good job of retaining these folks and making them a part of the outdoor rec industry and falling in love with camping? And I think he has some good commentary and some good answers as to we actually kind of did. Obviously some caveats in there and some good data that he's obviously seeing from the dealers, the people actually selling the RVs all across the country, and saying, hey, they might have bought their first RV come 2019, 2020. Are those customers coming back? Are you getting them coming, trading, still keeping their RVs? What's actually happening? Matt, what did Phil's kind of what did his commentary in RV Executive Magazine really say to you?
I was encouraged by it. It was really good to see that, there is data that shows more data. We already had some data through like kind of the KOA reports and stuff that shows that people who decided to try camping for the first time in COVID, there was a ton of them. And a lot of them decided they didn't like camping. But it was also fostered net growth to the industry. And that's a great story. There's a lot of, especially from like the investment side and the investor side, it's kind of a negative connotation of, oh, there's a huge COVID boom and that's gone away and occupancy's down, but it's not down from 2019, right? We're normalized, but there's net growth from what happened in COVID. There's people who camped for the first time or bought an RV for the first time that have adopted that as part of their travel habits, and they're going to buy another RV, right? They said 68% of first-time COVID RV buyers are planning to buy another RV. And compare that to average first-time buyer intent to buy a second RV is 60%. So that rose, from 60 to 68%. There's data that shows that these people are camping more frequently than would have been expected before COVID. And
I would say their brand loyalty remains incredibly high as well, both on the RV side and then you as the lodging operator or the campground. Like if you did a good job with these folks coming in and, being open and being kind about we understand you're new, we're going to help you out. It was a great experience. Those people are probably putting you into their regular travel rotation and coming back for that, annual visit, so to speak, which is another great piece to see.
Right. Yeah. So, it's interesting tidbit was that RVs are typically replaced every 2 to 5 years. That kind of got me thinking that there's probably not good for the used RV market.
Right.
That's had a lot of volatility. Good for buyers of used RVs. So if you're a budget conscious RV shopper and you want to buy something used, I expect some hot deals coming your way.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's and we've seen the used market be flooded a little bit over the last couple of years. And as you said, I think the RV dealers and manufacturers would probably be the first to admit that construction could have been a little bit better in the COVID era. And yeah, there's a lot of RVs that are going to continue to hit the market. But as you said, these are younger folks, a lot of high income folks as well, buying into the RV lifestyle. And it sounds like folks that are set up for the next 20, 30, 40 years, where if we continue to do a good job, they will continue to RV and continue to reward our industry, which is good to see. It's nice to have some real data from the dealers, that what they're seeing as far as sales and purchase behavior and all of that, in a really positive piece. I think Phil is a very good advocate, always well-spoken, likes to put out, good data with not hyperbolic intent behind it. And so really good piece from Phil, and good commentary to add to our ongoing discussion on COVID era RV purchase habits.
Yeah.
Our next story, we're going to talk a little bit about one of our buddies here, somebody we've both had the pleasure of interviewing on an interview style podcast, who's announced the launch of his property up in Michigan. Jeremy Johnson at Kona Hills Campground had their ribbon cutting here this last Friday, prior to Memorial Day weekend, capturing all of that momentum to head into this season. Jeremy's put a lot of hard work and time into this, and if you're really not familiar with his story, I'd highly suggest either watching the interview we did with him or find other things. He's very active on LinkedIn and social media, but really interesting background going from cannabis. He has sort of a marketing and digital media background, and then into the campground space. So cannabis and campgrounds is Jeremy's little calling card, but really smart guy, has done a really great job with kind of doing all of the right things, getting great professionals and people in his corner, trying to really just make sure that this goes the right way. And I think, they're starting at a small phase like most operators do, but I think this is a really good kind of template and model for folks to just kind of go back and watch and hear his story. And if you're somebody who is a younger person who wants to kind of embark on this journey and launch a park of your own, this would be honestly a really great model of how to do it, the type of things to be paying attention for, the folks that he's putting in his corner, the digital marketing that he's been able to employ to make, set the property up and get the pre-bookings. Like, he's doing all of the right things. Matt, what do you see with the launch here? I know we've been anticipating Jeremy getting ready to open here, and really nice to see him open and all that hard work finally come to fruition.
Yeah, big fan of Jeremy, and I think it follows kind of the theme of this week's show is old school camping, really experiencing nature.
This is not a resort. Jeremy did not start with bunch of money in a parking lot campground with water parks and all the like.
Right. It's so it's situated on a cliffside, really, and it's overlooking Lake Superior. It's Jeremy is from that local area, which is a great
the Marquette
story.
area. Yeah.
That, he's investing in where he's from, and he's really not just monetary investment, but he is personally invested in seeing this through and adding, growth to his hometown. And so he's got 80-acre site there, I think. 40 campsites. So, I think it's an underserved market that Jeremy's locally, but also just boutique, rustic, private, secluded campsites. It's not the sexiest thing that, to private equity or whatever. So I think sadly it's kind of neglected, but we're lucky to have people like Jeremy making it happen. He did a kind of a soft launch, friends and family, last week. Public bookings start it's been open for booking, but those bookings start tomorrow. So
Right.
huge congrats to Jeremy and his partners there. It's been a long journey for Jeremy, and he's really proven his determination and persistence in opening this awesome business. He's done it, like you said, he's done a fantastic job branding it and marketing it and putting it out there. So super happy for Jeremy, super happy for the town and the area of Marquette there. Might have to bring my truck, my tent over there.
There you go. I love it. Yeah, and I love, as you said, that old school camping style. If he's got the walk-in sites, similar to what you've got in the Catskills, traditional RV sites, but it's an attainable price point as well to kind of launch with sites starting around $30. I mean, that's unheard of in today's market. And I think, again, it's smart. I doubt he's going to keep the price there, long term. I don't know that makes sense financially. But I think it's a great way to get people from the community excited about it, to go to those really primitive sites, especially while he's still in phase one, right? I think, so often, you can kind of almost jump the gun a little bit and kind of price it too competitively, because you've got, a mortgage to pay and investors to pay, and understand, the pressure that comes from that. But I think the way that he's approaching this to get the community on his side and really price it the right way, I think will ultimately help him in the efforts long term. So just really smart with his story. Again, highly encourage you to go listen to the interview we did with him. Check out some of the other pieces and interviews he's done. I know he's been with a lot of great media partners in the camping space and done interviews about his story as well. So yeah, congrats to Jeremy, and really excited for his launch coming up tomorrow. Speaking of sort of another player in this space, we're going to talk about, a little bit more of a juggernaut, if you will. But I think, Matt, this is a name we have yet to really discuss on the show. And so for people who are not familiar with EOS Hospitality, do you want to just give folks a little bit of background on who they are, how their portfolio is constructed? They kind of dip their foot into both camps of traditional hospitality with hotels and restaurants, but also more recently into the RV space. So just tell folks a little bit about what EOS does. And this was really a great interview and conversation with their CEO, talking all about their portfolio, their strategy. So Matt, I'll give it to you to tell folks a little bit about EOS.
Yeah, so I've been intrigued by EOS for a while. I first kind of became aware of them a while back, actually through somebody I've interacted with on Twitter, Laura over there, who I think works in kind of like revenue strategy, regionally runs some properties and works in revenue management. And so have interacted with her and learned a little bit from her. And it's an interesting story. They are like 7 years into it, I think, and they started with one hotel, and now they're at 50 properties and like 7,000 keys, which is quite a portfolio.
Insane. Right.
And I think it's 11 outdoor hospitality properties. 7 are Sun Outdoors managed properties, and they own a few. Pretty well distributed across the country, focused in RV resorts and a couple of really awesome glamping properties. I took a particular close look at Big Sur Campground, which
really intriguing, especially the ADRs at that property at the highest of high-end units that they have there. Really interesting, as quoted in this article.
Right. And so they've got 2 places actually out there, Riverside Campground and Cabins and Big Sur Campground and Cabins. And I always love seeing these properties that have kind of a mixed unit, type. Conventional wisdom tells you not to do that. And I think there's some good points there. And maybe it's obviously an incredible location, Big Sur, pulling from Los Angeles primarily, I would assume. And, well, I guess it's kind of halfway in between San Francisco and Los Angeles. So you're probably pulling from both cities, which is incredible.
Right. It's a great hospitality market, and obviously
Yeah.
one that this is a name like the Catskills in New York that
Yep.
people all over the country recognize.
Yep. So, I always dig into these properties just to see how are they laid out. Is it a separate section of cabins? Is it, how do they break it out? Because I've heard from a lot of people, hey, don't, your ADR is going to suffer, your occupancy is going to suffer on your glamping, on your cabins, if people can see RVs. And again, there's a lot of truth to that. And maybe, location overcomes a lot of things. So I think there's layers there and nuance and kind of different things to dive into. But back to EOS at large, I always find it interesting too. Sun communities is such an interesting group to study. We've talked about them at length, and I always find it interesting when they find these groups to partner with. I think it says a lot about these groups that if you're getting the attention of a Sun Outdoors who's probably perfectly capable of running these properties adequately themselves, it shows that you've done something to really demonstrate your expertise, your professionalism, just your process, your system, your people, and all that. So I think it's a hell of an endorsement of the team at EOS over there that they're managing seven Sun Outdoors properties. What did you think, Alex?
Yeah, and I love that, even in this interview highlighting one, they really would like to and are signaling a move into outdoor hospitality as kind of their next frontier. Not to say that they won't continue to expand from 50 hotels to further. But really, again, like a lot of the bigger brands in the space who have made acquisitions into the outdoor hospitality market, they're kind of hotel guys that have also kind of seen the light in outdoor hospitality, and seeing those investment dollars come in great locations is incredibly positive. As you said, a lot of these locations, I think, are really good. And I think, almost all of the acquisitions and moves that we've talked about, including, the portion of EOS's portfolio, these are really great locations. And I think that's something, we just can't talk about enough, that those are the campgrounds that are attractive to investors, that continue to win. And you're right, these 7 Sun properties, to get, one Sun Communities management contract is, difficult in itself, but to, continue to impress them, be a part of their portfolio mix, now have 7. I think that they've also positioned them like other folks in our space that have, done similar, where not only are they doing acquisitions, they're doing management, they're focusing on 2 key, sort of sides of the market with traditional hospitality and outdoor hospitality. And it's a very kind of proven model, but it seems like these guys are really great operators. Their hotels are really high end, great flags like Marriott. They've got on-site restaurants and other components to it. Even among the outdoor hospitality properties, getting ADRs of 500, 600 a night. These are really competitive rates, and you can make a lot of great money and revenue from this. So I like to kind of see them kind of helping push, I would say, the higher end of outdoor hospitality forward and making great locations with very good rates. I think that allows for more rate flexibility just in general in our space. If we get more consumers comfortable with associating camping with glamping and higher end camping accommodations. So all of that, I think, speaks really well if I'm looking at just kind of on the macro level, what EOS can do if they continue to take outdoor hospitality as more of a push and make that a larger part of their portfolio moving forward. So a lot of great pieces in here. This was a nice interview with their CEO, and excited to see what they continue to do and see, what locations are next from them. It's always kind of fun to kind of predict and understand, where are people looking at. I'm sure we'll continue to see acquisition news and talk about EOS more moving forward. And Matt, to kind of round out the show today, we've got just a couple of more glamping pieces. And obviously we kind of have been ending the show with some data recently, and both the next two kind of both talk about data in some unique ways. Really to close out, we'll start with an announcement here from Sage Outdoor Advisory, great company in this space who's well known for a lot of their data and market reports. They have just announced the release of their glamping market report. So obviously we've talked a lot about rustic camping, but glamping here at sort of the end of the show today. And they've come out with some really cool ones. And I think at an attainable price point, something that, is will provide a lot of value for folks, both state specific and some national data as well. And I think this has been an area that, as we've talked a lot about, and even attending shows like Glamping Show USA or other outdoor hospitality events, there's a lot of data from partners like KOA and Hip Camp and others that put out data in the camping industry. But we really have yet to see a lot of great data come out in the glamping space really until now. So in part of that is the sort of fragmented nature of the glamping space. There's obviously a lot more players and so much just newer space in general with less data on it. But Matt, I think this is really good that Sage has taken a focus on this. They've kind of signaled that this is a priority for them, and they just released this, I think here yesterday on Wednesday of this week. So really nice to see them come out with some great data.
Yeah, agreed. And I started digging in last night. I got, I went through one of the reports, and it's comprehensive.
I'm sure we'll be coming back with some findings here, but we gotta kind of sit down and understand it a little bit here first.
I'm excited for it. It's kind of a I don't know if it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? We're in the infancy of the glamping market to some degree. You look at one of the takeaways is the number of properties that they have tracked, 745, which is just such a tiny number when you look at hospitality overall. It's the lack of data is what creates an opportunity a lot of times. So it's the start of kind of professionalizing the market on the investment side, which makes it more efficient and just it's harder work, it's more elbow grease, but just by default there's usually more opportunities in the investment market when it's less efficient. So I think it's great, it's good, they're doing great work. They are the industry leader in terms of this type of data, feasibility studies, market studies across outdoor hospitality, appraisals. So they've certainly got quite a bit of data, and good to see them putting it out for an affordable price. I'll be looking out for when New York becomes available in Massachusetts, and definitely diving into what's available there. It's all good. It's encouraging. I think it's a natural step in kind of the maturation of our industry and our market.
Absolutely. And to round out today, we'll talk again. We're keeping on this glamping trail with stories to close out the show. We talked last week about USA Today's top 10 campgrounds and a lot of the awards that came out, highlighting some great familiar faces with Normandy Farms and Jellystone and some of the Northgate properties with Camp Fimfo. But wanted to just take a moment and highlight some of the top 10 glamping spots, because we really didn't get a chance to highlight them last week. I would say the one thing, Matt, that I found from this top 10 was, one, I was pretty unfamiliar with everybody who was on this list. And not to say that that's a bad thing or these properties are not, unworthy of getting these top 10 spots. But just as we alluded to, a lot of glamping operators are individually owned properties. These are not a lot of times corporate owned. And these are really locations that were spread out all across the country. A lot of diversity of units, from, safari tents to Airstreams to tiny homes to, you name it. There was just so many different types of units. And I think that it was encouraging to see the mix of outdoor hospitality or of glamping properties and accommodations that were included in this list. So I think that's really good. And I'm really kind of happy to see that.
Yeah, Agreed. That was my main takeaway too, was right. Probably the most well-known one on there that gets a ton of love because it's an incredible property is Paws Up.
Right.
So, well deserved, but I was encouraged to see the geographical kind of diversity. Saw New York represented with the Finger Lakes, in Watkins Glen, Nature Lux and Stars. New Jersey, right? That was kind of surprising. I don't think about New Jersey when I think about
not typically associated with outdoor rec.
New Jersey gets a bad rap,
right?
Probably across the board. But I lived in Philadelphia for a while, so became familiar with the Jersey Shore and South Jersey specifically. Beautiful place. The Pine Barrens are super cool. Some really awesome campgrounds there. I think like I said, New Jersey just gets some tough sledding. Bryson City, awesome area. Alabama, I think, is kind of having a renaissance in terms of outdoor hospitality. Tennessee, beautiful. Michigan, a few properties there. So yeah, I was highly encouraged to see, mom and pop, so to speak, shining in this list. And I think it speaks to a few things we've touched on here, is the fragmented nature, the mom and pop nature.
Right.
That's what hospitality is, right? All the big names get a ton of play and press and everything, but it's still a mom and pop industry at heart. And I think it'll stay that way. It'll evolve and it'll become more modern versions of mom and pop, so to speak, but it'll stay boutique.
Right. And that's what I love. These are all tech enabled, great marketing, really incredible properties that, even going through, there's some really creative, cool ideas that individual operators have employed at their property. And I think it goes to show you can run a great property as a mom and pop with hospitality in mind and lead that as sort of a first principle for you and your operation, but still win awards, get the accolades, have great customer experiences, run it the right way. And there are ways to do that without necessarily going the corporate route. So really good to see in, obviously well-run corporate parks, but nice to see a lot of the mom and pop owners get some accolades and get highlighted as some of the best glamping spots across the country. All right. Well, Matt, I think we made it through another kind of juggernaut week of news here. I'm thankful for our partners, Good Morning Coffee, and our our team there with our Good Morning Brew Coffee. And also be sure to check out some of the other segments of the show if you missed some episodes earlier this week or trying to get caught up after Memorial Day. I know Sarah and Leo talked all about Spain's summer tourism season. And our hotel crew yesterday talked all about Marriott's new brand and some great summer travel plans if you're looking for all of the best hotel and Europe hospitality news. Be sure to check out all of our other hosts and partners every other day of the week. But Matt and I will see you back here next Thursday for another great episode of Good Morning Outdoors. Hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Alex. Bye.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.